Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm excited. We're back here today. I'm your host, Calvin Timms. You can find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin. My co-host on Twitter at Dynasty_Dale. And I'm super excited. We're going over the running backs from the Combine, going through some of their testing. They didn't really have much of it, but giving our updated rankings afterwards. And like I mentioned in the video that came out yesterday, we do have a guest with us today, Mike with Smash Accept is the Dynasty podcast that they do. They do a lot of trade consultations and breakdowns for that stuff. They're very good about the trades. I've asked him some trading advice myself personally in a couple of leagues that I'm in with him. Nerd Boy Takes. You can see it here on YouTube. And Mike, how's it going? Glad to have you here
Doing
today.
well. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. Smash Accept is definitely more about trades. You know, we do talk trades. We talk about player values. We are heavy into valuing players per picks. So it's really great to hop on here and deal with the different community. Talk to you guys about like you can hop over to us and kind of figure out as far as these rookie picks go, where
Mm-hmm.
you have them valued player wise. That's where we kind of concentrate most of our content.
Nice. Yeah, that's one thing we've been talking a little bit on. We did some player comparisons, who we'd rather have, pick or player, and it's where it gets tough. Once you get later in the first round, it gets a little, never know how the draft's going to go once you get at the end of the first, so you never know who's going to be there, so it gets a little challenging to put a good value to those picks,
Yeah,
but that's where I think you
it's
guys
tough,
could.
especially in a startup, where you're drafting either placeholders, or you're at this point in time possibly drafting actual rookies, trying to decide where you're going to take these guys, and so fluid. Where we saw Anthony Richardson, do what we expected him to do over the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
but that changes the whole pick dynamic too, where the
Right.
104, 105, 106
Yep.
shift a little bit. Actually, with Richardson possibly sliding into that 103, 104 spot, it's constantly changing, and it's a daily thing as far as especially when pro days come up, and
Mhm.
why talking about it and going it over constantly is pretty important. These guys and where they're going to go in startups.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And yeah, the cheapest time to get these picks is probably now, before every day that we get closer and closer to the actual NFL draft. These guys are just going to continue to skyrocket up these picks are just going to get more and more valuable, right? And
Mhm.
skyrocket up the boards in terms of startup value and everything like that. So no, if you guys need any trade advice, like I said, I've asked Mike personally some advice in one league. So, definitely a good guy to talk to if you're looking for any of that. So,
Did it, man. Yeah,
all
I'm
right,
always here. My DMs are always open on Twitter too. So if you guys have any questions about trades, definitely send them over.
perfect. All right, so you guys ready to talk about some of these running backs?
Yeah, let's
Can't
do it.
wait.
All right, so everybody, Combine, we went through the quarterbacks on Monday. If you haven't checked it out, please go check out that video. Go check it out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you're listening to the podcast. If you can, while you're there, leave a comment, subscription, review, like, whatever it is, just to help with the algorithm and all that stuff. Just push the podcast out to more people. Trying to grow, get more content out for you guys as well. So, short little plug there. But we did the quarterbacks earlier this week. Decent amount of movement. I was already high on Anthony Richardson beforehand, so my rankings really didn't change too much after the combine. It kind of just reconfirmed what I was looking at. And same thing a little bit here with these running backs. Not a ton changed for me. Some of these guys actually fell down more than anything, versus a lot of guys jumping up the board. But you got to start at the top there. Bijan Robinson weighing in 1 inch shorter than what he was listed at Texas, but same weight. Killed it in the combine. Just looks so smooth out there. Put up a pretty solid 40 as well. Can't complain with a 4.46. I know some people are saying they expected him to be faster, but I mean 4.46 is pretty solid for a running back.
It is.
Solid vert, solid broad jump. Bijan still the number one overall. I mean, are we all three in agreement there?
Yeah, he would have to do some crazy, crazy stuff in that combine for
Yes.
him to drop out of that spot.
Right,
Um,
right.
Uh,
yeah,
100% agree with that.
So
Yeah, so Bijan's
from
safe.
from a pick standpoint, you'd be a good one to ask about this. With what Anthony Richardson did, and I know a lot of people still like Bryce Young. If you go and watch our rookie breakdown, I'm not the biggest fan of Bryce Young for fantasy football. NFL is a different beast, right? I don't love the upside of Bryce Young, so he's not one of my top 3 dynasty picks anyway right now. But with what Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud did at the combine, is there any way in a super flex you're taking either one of those guys over Bijan Robinson, or is he still pretty solidly the 101?
Yeah, so I would never suggest taking anybody over Bijan. What I would suggest is trading back.
Sure.
So if
Yeah.
you are really into, you need a QB on your team and you like the ups Richardson, or you really loved what you saw from Stroud, taking that value that you can possibly get by trading back is
Mm-hmm.
I would never reach on a player in a rookie um rookie draft. I'm not gonna reach on a QB because I need it if I have the 101. I'm
Right.
gonna get that back and possibly grab a second on top, or you know something that makes it worth my while. That one trade back could easily get you like 201. People are going to be loving the fact that Bijan is available, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
they'll actually probably a little bit more on top just to make that one pick straight up. So
Sure.
I would definitely shop that around before I reach on any player.
So you still definitely have him above like an Anthony Richardson. The only reason I'm asking that is because if Anthony Richardson with that athletic profile, if he does hit, almost 9 times out of 10, he's going to be worth more than even an elite running back in Superflex, right? That's the only kind of consideration there. I think, is it the safety factor with Bijan versus someone like an Anthony Richardson?
I think it's more of the perceived value.
Sure.
As far as the community goes, people have been talking about Bijan for 3 years now.
That is
They've been
true.
talking about when he comes, he's the Barkley of this,
Mhm.
this time period. So he's been so hyped up. Or even if I think that Anthony Richardson is going to maybe outproduce him from a fantasy standpoint, I cannot go with him over Bijan because I think you're going to get a lot more for Bijan than you would for Anthony Richardson.
Sure.
Great. So I think
Mhm.
even just taking him and moving off of him
Mm-hmm.
for a quarterback be something I would suggest over taking Anthony.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so number 2 guy for me is still going to be, and so Bijan's in his own tier essentially for
Mhm.
for these running backs. It's tough to put anybody else in that tier. He's just so valuable. Like you said, he's the Saquon Barkley of this year's draft class, and that's just such a special talent. You can't really move on from that. Second tier for me is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama, 4.36, 40, pretty solid there. Not the best
Mhm.
vert, but most running backs don't have super high verts. It's kind of it's one of those things that it doesn't tell you much about a running back prospect. So 33.5 is not bad. It's not great. It's just kind of middle of the range there. But 4.36 is pretty quick. You like to see that from him. Anything sub 4.4 for a running back is flying for these guys. I know he did come in a little bit lighter at 199, but he also came in a little bit shorter as well, 5'9", so he's a little bit stockier there. But on the field, man, he looks so good as well. Same as Bijan. Bijan is such a bully, a bruiser type of
Yeah.
back at 215. But Jahmyr Gibbs is just so smooth with the ball in his hands. The Kamara comps are just so hard to pass up, right? So Jahmyr Gibbs at 2. Are you liking that value there?
Yeah,
I am.
yeah, I do as well. I agree that there's a big teardrop from Gibbs because he is elusive. He's got that,
Mm-hmm.
open field skill that I don't see from any other backs as far as movement. His vision is really good as well. I like his just he just is in his own little tier. And the weight thing doesn't really scare me off too much because
No.
what did CMC weighed in at the same exact weight this
I think he
combine?
was 202, so it was like 3
Yeah,
pounds
so maybe a
difference. It's
couple
like,
pounds over.
It's pretty much the same. Yeah.
who
Yeah.
Yeah,
cares, right? It's
I
such a
wouldn't
small
I
amount of
wouldn't
weight.
be
And the
too
thing is, too,
scared of
with
that weigh
Jahmyr,
in.
I would say that the thing with Jahmyr Gibbs, too, a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people still have an old school mindset with running backs where, you want that 3 down grinder who's going to carry the ball 400 times. And it's just not Jahmyr Gibbs' game. That's not what he's going to be doing. He's going to be more of a pass catching specialist for a team. He really reminds me of kind of a Jamal Charles. He really does. Or an Alvin Kamara, where they're not going to get a ton of carries on the ground, but you don't want them to. With that smaller frame, him getting a few less touches is probably good for him, but I think he can do more with less as well. So Jahmyr Gibbs, I still think that he's going to be extremely valuable for fantasy football as well.
Yep, I agree. He's definitely a PPR cheat code in my mind as
Yes.
far as
Yes.
talent
Yep.
level goes.
So would you still have him in, like, let's say a half point? We don't really typically do half point leagues. I'm just kind of a PPR truther, purist in that sense. So in a half point, are you still having Jahmyr Gibbs this high, or are you kind of dropping him down to the tier of the next couple guys we might mention?
I would still keep Gibbs where he is,
Okay.
because he's going to get that DC. He's going to get that draft
True.
capital. Where this not going to see another. It's going to be Bijan and then maybe Gibbs in the first round, and that's about it.
Yep.
So first round draft capital for running back does mean a lot as far as what kind of player they're going to be for that team. They're going to commit a first round pick to the running back. They're using them, and they're going to use them from day one. I want to see that.
Sure.
I want to see them light on his usage when he starts off. If I see that draft capital hit, I can't move him away from that spot.
Sure.
Not going to be another running back taken that close as far as first round goes.
All right, perfect. All right, so the next tier, guys, for me, this is where we drop off, and this is kind of where I feel like you mentioned it before. There's a big tier break between Gibbs and the next couple of guys, and this is where I've seen across the whole Dynasty community right now, the rankings just vary widely person to person, right? And there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer yet until we get to the actual NFL draft, and it's going to solidify this maybe a little bit more. But for me, I have a tier of 2 guys here. It's going to be Zach Charbonnet and Kendre Miller. Now, Kendre Miller came in 5'11", 215, didn't do any testing. He's still recovering from, I think it's a knee injury that he suffered at the end of the college season there. Charbonnet came in 6 foot, 214, so another bigger guy there. Charbonnet actually did do a little bit of testing, 4.53 in the 40, a 37-inch vert, which was pretty solid for being that big, Broad jump was pretty solid with 10'2", so, good athlete all around. He had a pretty good 10-yard split, but slowed down a little bit in that 40 to finish with a 4.53, so you like to see that he does have pretty good burst, but maybe his long speed's not as great as some of the other guys in the class, which is fine. I don't think that's going to be Zach Charbonnet's game in the NFL. So I have these two pretty much interchangeable as my 3-4 here. I'd be happy with either one of them. What are your thoughts on these guys? Dale, you have any major thoughts on these guys after the combine?
No, yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with that. I actually have them in the same spots. I like where you have them. Um, you know, I think I really think Zach Charbonnet did just enough to kind of keep him at that tier, and with Kendre Miller, not testing, which is okay, but I'm still worried about his injury history. Like, I'm a little scared drafting him where he may go in some rookie drafts. So, I would kind of I I would prefer him maybe in, like, the early second round compared to maybe, like, the 110 where he might be going
Sure.
personally because of that injury history, but, other than that, like, I'm still really excited about these players.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, Charbonnet is definitely up there for me. I am
Mhm,
fully in on him as his profile goes and his skill set. I think he's gonna slot into a 3 down back
Mm-hmm.
pretty fluidly in the NFL.
mhm,
He is definitely one of the most complete backs in my mind, where he does have that size and he
Yep.
still has the other little skills that I look for. As far as vision is just huge for me in running backs.
yeah,
Yep.
That's the first thing that I look
100%.
at. I need to see a running back that can see the field, that knows how to read a defense. Because if you don't see the field and you don't know what kind of cuts you're going to make or where you're going to go,
Hmm.
not really going to make it far, as far
Right.
as your carries go.
Right.
Yeah.
And he does that very well. It's, in comparison to someone like Zach Evans, I do love the player that I had
Hmm.
him ranked pretty highly for. That vision just isn't there like Charbonnet, So
Yeah. Yep.
Agreed.
Yep. And that's the one nice thing. Like I said, we did these rankings about a month ago, and I decided that this year I'm gonna start doing basically multiple sets of rankings and updates and everything, because over the last few years it feels like people, right out of the college season, you have initial rankings of these guys, then you have everyone starts to watch their tape and they start to nitpick all these things, and guys get shifted up and down, and then after the actual NFL draft, this guy was a fourth rounder instead of a third rounder, so now he's, we're going to take him in the fourth round of the rookie draft. And it's like, he's still a pretty good player, and he was the number 2 guy. Should we knock him this much? And I'm just trying to track these guys a little bit more so that I can clearly evaluate where the skill level is versus the public perception, if you will. And these top 4 guys for me, they have not changed. Zach Charbonnet, I thought he was the safest one a month ago. Still stands true to today. Like, he's just so solid. There's no real holes to his game, like you said. So love to see that there for Zach Charbonnet. And Kendrick Miller, again, I do like his vision, like you mentioned, but we'll see where his draft capital ends up. He does have a little bit of an injury history, but we'll see where he gets drafted in the NFL. And if he gets high enough, I think that he'll be well worth the investment here.
Yep.
All right, so the next tier, guys, for me at least, is going to be, and this is where, Zach Evans was my top leader of this tier 4, but he came in a little bit smaller than I kind of anticipated, did not do anything really at the combine. So with the lower weight than expected, and I wasn't the biggest fan of Zach Evans beforehand, I still have him in this tier, but I just have a few guys I'd rather take over him. So at the top of the tier, I have Sean Tucker, followed by Israel Abanikanda. Tajay Spears did jump up a tier for me here. I do like what you saw from Tajay Spears. He came in a little bit bigger as well. Didn't do any of the testing, though. That's the one downside. A lot of these running backs did nothing from a testing standpoint. Tajay did do the broad jump and the vert. He had a 39-inch vert, which is pretty solid, even coming in heavier than we anticipated. Solid broad jump as well at 10'5", so can't complain there. But didn't run the 40, which was odd. Him and Sean Tucker didn't run the 40, and it was like, man, I really wanted to see what those guys could put up in those numbers. Bonaconda, he had an injury as well, but he wasn't able to test, but came in at a very solid size, 5'10", 216. I have Zach Evans number 4 in this tier, and then the last guy is going to be Devin Achane. Came in at 5'9", 188, but he is pretty much as quick and as solid as everybody expected. The question is whether or not he's going to get the draft capital, so we're still a month and a half away from figuring that out. But a 4.32, we just talked about with Jahmyr Gibbs. Anytime you can put sub 4.4s for a running back, they are a special talent that, will probably get a role somewhere in the NFL. Now, again, he's probably not going to be a 400 touch guy, but he could go somewhere like San Francisco or Miami and be just fine for fantasy football. So I do have him up there. Any major changes either one of you guys would see in this tier?
I like that tier. I would say the player that I really love is Tajay Spears. I absolutely love Tajay Spears. I like with him, like I just feel he plays really hard, and he's more like your Chris Carson type who just runs violently,
Yeah.
and I really like that personally. And I mean that does translate to maybe more injuries, but I really feel that like he just plays hard. He has decent hands. They aren't the greatest, but I personally really like him. So and then there's Sean Tucker, who is going to be very interesting to see to see how he does in his pro day.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to our episode a couple days ago, like it's just the underwear Olympics. It really is.
Right.
So So it's really hard to see how these guys do with, real NFL competition compared to,
Sure.
like with Tucker going, being in the ACC, and Tajay Spears being in the American Conference. It's going to be interesting how,
Adapt.
yes.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some variance there as far as we I'm a little higher than the consensus on a chain. I have him
Okay.
above Kendrick, so I actually have
Mhm.
him
Okay. Interesting.
up there. So I have him above Kendrick just because of his skill set and the fact that he that dual ability.
Mm-hmm.
I was testing for wide receivers
Right.
combine, and he
Yeah.
was just I think he's gonna fly up the board with that skill set of being a speedster. There's gonna be, I think, a big role for him in the NFL.
Sure. Sure.
That size is really the only thing that is
I
Mhm.
putting
know.
people off.
I
Yeah,
know.
Um,
If he
yeah.
was
but
200 pounds, if he was 10 pounds heavier, I don't think
yeah,
anyone would question it at all. But he's just a little
plays.
bit tinier.
Yeah, he plays. Like he's a little Tony Pollard. Pollard was a wide receiver,
True.
and
True.
Mhm.
reminds me a lot of him as far as having that receiving ability, and that quickness right out the gate, where he can just break out for big plays. He's going to have some big playability in the NFL for sure. But outside of that, I think it. I'm looking up my rankings right now because I should know them off the top of my head here. But yeah, so it would go the chain, Dre. Then I have Sean Tucker
Okay.
and Zach Evans. Touched on Zach Evans a little bit there.
Sure.
Is someone that I there
Okay.
think have a little bit of knock on his vision, and
Hmm.
do not like that he weighed in 15 pounds lighter than what
I
he was
know
listed at.
that's what killed it for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I had him, up there. I actually had him my original rankings. I do three different rankings. I do the initial ones based off of talent.
Hmm.
I watch a tape guy and I watch a certain amount of games for each player and then rank them based on what I see.
Sure.
And I do my second rankings off of the combine. And I usually, take some numbers and look at as far as, what they're weighing in at. And, I don't let that affect it to the degree that it
Right.
does for most people. But, you know, he did drop significantly. I had him at the top of the first, and now he's in the mid second for me.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty big drop. Yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
hoping that his pro day, he can rise a little bit,
Sure.
because I am rooting for him. He was coming out, neck and neck with Bijan as prospects. I think
Hmm.
people remember this prospect profile, and when he was coming in
Mhm.
to school, it was Vince or Bijan.
Yeah. He was a
That
very,
was
very
a
highly
coin
touted guy for sure.
that was a
Mhm.
coin
He
flip at
was.
one point in time. People say that he didn't put in the effort to maintain that and stay at that level, but I guess that remains seen.
So, quick question for you, because we're both not the highest Zach Evans guy. So, with you
Mhm.
being someone who really likes his game and everything, you'd be the perfect one to ask on this.
Sure.
How do you? Because we have a very similar process. Like I mentioned before, we do an initial end of season rankings where we watch a little bit of games on these guys and kind of talent and everything. And the one thing with Zach Evans was the lack of production for him was like just like
Mhm.
what happened with this guy in college, because he does have all the skills in the world, but it seemed like he never really had any effort at all to his game. And that's the hardest thing for me to overcome. That's why I'm so much more down on him, is because I see all the talent there, but I just see it being wasted.
Yeah. Yeah. My process is definitely a little different. Look at that breakout ability, that those big play breakouts. I weigh that to yards per carry, and then there's different numbers that I will kind of match up, and then going through the tape. There's a little process, and I do go slower with these guys. I'm a big Devi guy, so I'm
Gotcha.
in leagues with players, I've had Zach Evans on my roster for 3 years now.
Sure.
Been looking at these players for a long time, way before they even considered, coming out for the NFL. So I followed him all through college, and you know, really not his fault because he got injured, and then one of the best running backs in college merged, and he kind of he took the
Mhm.
back seat there. It's not necessarily his fault that he was on, the 2025 101, I believe, or 2024. I'm not sure when he's going to come out.
Sure.
I like his profile. He's got his holes, and he's got his knocks, but for somebody that you can get maybe in the early second to mid second, I think he has a really good chance of carving out a 3 down rule, depending on that landing spot and that draft capital, which he's not doing a lot of favors for right now. But
Sure.
you know.
Sure. A good pro
Yeah,
day though, and he's right back in the mix with all the rest of these guys.
Yeah.
So, don't want to knock him.
I
Like you said, the weight it was a little concerning when he was listed at 212, 215, and comes in at 202. You're like, oh man.
yeah, it's that was definitely alarming. But I often tell people that this tier right here is, once you get after Gibbs, any of these guys can really be free in my mind.
Sure. Sure.
There's not huge, drop from
Mhm.
the third to the ninth in this class.
Right.
Really depends on how high they're taken and what kind of role they have. It's, it is tough to predict. There's a little more clarity right now, but after pro days and after the actual draft,
Yeah. Yep.
I'm really excited to touch on final rankings. A little more clarity. This is just
Right.
kind of
Right.
this is a guessing game at this point. See what you want to see, but you don't know what the NFL's thinking right.
Exactly. No, that's a very, very good point. So do you have Abanaconda as a top 9 guy then? Top 10?
Yeah, I have him. So I have Tajay, and then I have Izzy right
Nice.
after there.
Okay.
Uh,
Perfect. I like this guy.
they're
I'm much higher than Dale is in most of the community. I just, for whatever reason, when I watch this guy play, I love watching him. And, he's prototypical size. Seems like he's got all the skills in his tool set. He's got some downsides as well, some weaknesses to his game. He seems a little impatient at times and gets a little jittery back there. But, I think that's something that he could iron out when he comes to the NFL. So I'm a lot higher. I think there's a lot of potential there, but I think a lot of
yeah.
people are rising on him.
I want to see the draft capital on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fearing that he might be a day 3 guy.
Yeah, that's what
I
I'm
don't
nervous
know.
about.
You have guys like Eric Gray above him. Eye on him. He's doing a lot of favors for his draft stock right now. Love his tape. I think he has the ability to definitely be regular back for a team. I'm looking at guys, excuse me, that will have that 3 down role, that have that skill set,
Sure.
that size that the NFL looks for. I'm by no means a draft scout at all, but
Sure.
I have a good idea of what they look for and what they value. And then there's also what I value and what I look for in fantasy, because backs that are 3 down roles in the NFL don't always equate to monster fantasy points. So you
Mhm.
kind of have to really put a fine line there as far as you value and what you think the NFL is going to value at the same time.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, it's a bit of a guessing game right now, but
Mhm.
once the draft gets here, we'll have some more clarity, and then there will always be those guys that get drafted way too highly, and you're like, I don't know if I could get behind this guy being taken this high, but
Yeah.
there's always those guys. All right, so my last tier here, and I'm not going the full, not all of these guys, but just basically the top 12 here. Tank Bigsby, Chase Brown, Roshan Johnson, and Evan Hull are kind of the guys that really made a name for themselves recently. I had Tank Bigsby a little bit higher. I did drop him down a tier. Came in a little bit lighter. Didn't test as well as you were kind of hoping at the combine here. So I was just trying to find his stats. 4.56, which isn't terrible, but then only a 32.5-inch vert, 9'11" broad. On the field, he's good, but he's just not great. And that's the one downside with Tank Bigsby. But again, I like what I can see on tape, but I just like a lot of the other top 9 guys that we already talked about a little bit more than him right now. Chase Brown really did a good name for himself at the combine.
Yes, he did.
Massive 4.43 40-inch vert, 10'7" broad. He was just killing all the athletic endeavors. He doesn't have the best production at Illinois, but it's making you rewatch it a little bit. Go back and check him.
Well, I will say on Chase Brown that his last season at Illinois was really good. Like I did watch a lot of Illinois games this year, and he was always he was always having like 30 rushes, 200 plus yards, a couple touchdowns, almost every game it felt.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's definitely someone that's going to be rising up boards here towards the draft. Roschon Johnson, this guy's hard to evaluate for me. He's got prototypical size. He's not the best athlete, 4'5'8", 31.5-inch vert, 10'2" broad. He looks a little clunky on the field when you watch him, but at the same time, he does have his production was limited because he's on the same team as Bijan. So, it's hard to say what he would be able to do if he was the standalone guy for this team. So he's the one guy he did, look, he made a little bit of a name for himself. He came in a little bit better than I think people expected at the combine. And with that size, there's something to keep track of as well. And then the last guy, Evan Hull. This guy is another guy that I think could be a PPR machine. 4.47 40. He did the shuttle and the 3-cone and had pretty solid timings in those. 6'9" 3-cone is not bad for a running back. 37-inch vert, 10'3" broad. I think that he's someone that is going to be more of a third down back in the NFL, and for fantasy football, that could be very valuable if he gets gone, if he gets taken to a decent team there. Just an upside shot there, but you never know. Like we just talked about, this guy could be a 3rd-round pick to San Francisco. We have no idea at this point in time. So that's my tier 5. Is there anybody you don't like or that you think I'm missing?
I like that tier. I think Evan Hull is definitely a Devi darling, is what I like to call him. Where
there you go.
he has been
right.
A pipe dream of a lot of guys.
Sure.
Taken in the 9th round, 10th round, and they're just they're on him, sitting on him, and kind of waiting for their fingers crossed because people have seen that skill shine in college, and
Sure.
I think there was always we're finally getting to see that come to fruition a little. Chase Brown is a riser for me, definitely. They're with that injury, a lot of people are going to get a good discount on a good player.
Sure.
He is regarded as one of the best prospects in this class, probably this time last year, where a lot of people were on him, and then that injury happened and was kind of a forgotten man for the most part. So I'm really, I really like the fact that we're going to get a big discount on him. I think now it's going to be less of a discount, unfortunately, but
sure.
it's still really good to see that actually happen. Excuse me. You're on a guy and you know that he's going to do well. It's just nice to get that validation. Really glad he showed out in the combine for sure.
Nice. Now you already mentioned Eric Gray. Is there anyone else you wanted to give a shout out here before we wrap up the combine portion?
I like Dwayne McBride.
Yep.
He's another guy that I would probably have above the tier that you just mentioned.
Okay.
Probably, yeah, like slightly above that tier. I think that he is an excellent running back. I think he's being slept on a little bit. So I think he could be a really good value, maybe at the beginning of the 3rd. Not sure where he's going to go, but he's a great name to in mind when you're doing your rookie drafts and try to monitor where his value is right now because I don't hear him talked about a lot, but I do like his
Mhm.
profile.
Nice. Nice. All right, so perfect. The last thing I'm going to ask you, so that's the combine. That's my rankings. Again, we kind of got Mike's here a little bit, his top 10, 12 guys here.
Mhm.
How would you, because you're more of a trader and a drafter type of guy, you have pretty definitive values on these guys, I'd imagine at this point in time. How many of these guys do you have a first round draft pick valuation on? I mean, obviously Jameer and Bijan, Charbonnet, your number 3, 4 guys. Like, who would you be willing to take in the first round?
So yeah, I mean Bijan's 101.
Right.
Gibbs varies a little bit. I would say
Yeah.
he's, it depends on league format. Super flex, 1 QB, and
Right.
there's a heavy, running back points per carry plus or anything like that. So, he could be anywhere from the 104 to the 106. Like Charbonnet at the 108, 109 range.
Sure.
Um, then there's this fluid ranking, like I spoke on our podcast maybe an hour ago. The
Sure.
109 to the 202, so fluid right now.
Yeah.
There's
Yep.
really
Yeah.
all very close to each other, and draft is the only thing that's going to give this clarity as far as the 109 to the 202, 203 is going to be. I have a chain in there, Tucker, Zach Evans. They can all slide into like that 111, 112 range
Sure.
if they get that really good draft capital and land in a good spot. So it's hard to say if there's going to be another running back in that first round, but I think there's a good chance that you're going to look at like Downs, another running back, and the first round for the most part. I think that's probably what's going to happen, but I couldn't tell you which one it's going to be.
Sure. Yeah, that's
It's a waiting game right there.
yeah. This will all come to more of a consensus after the actual NFL draft here, but just gut feeling right now. Who do you think? So where would your line be for second round picks? Abaconda, would he be a second rounder? Tajay, is that kind of the limit? Like Tank Bigsby, Chase Brown, these guys more than likely third rounders. We've been doing
Yeah,
a.
so
Go ahead.
um I would right now um I look at Zach Evans, Tucker, Shane, and those guys are all early second. I would say that Down, the Ajay are all back end second.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to happen that way because of the tight ends that are amazing in this class.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
you're going to see full tight ends, and then all that wide receiver value is going to slide to the second.
Mm-hmm.
Is great. And I
Yep.
always tell people that this is very similar to the 2020 rookie draft where we saw JJ and Higgins and Pittman all in the second round.
Mhm.
You're going to
Yeah.
see crazy value. Like people like Hyatt and um, you know, I don't want to say Butte because
Mm.
that's
Yeah.
maybe not the case anymore.
Right.
But
But even
um,
Flowers, I know people are kind of up and down on him, but Josh Downs, Cedric Tillman
Yeah.
is making a case for himself, Marvin Mims. There's a
Yeah.
lot of
I
guys.
love. I'm gonna plug Marvin Mims in there. He's my favorite. He was a sleeper, and now he's getting a lot of hype.
Oh, I've been high
Mhm.
on him this whole time, man. I'm with you. I'm
A
with you.
lot of guys have been sending me videos and me, oh, they're on your boy, this and that, and I love Mims at the end of the second, early third. I think Hillman as well. You mentioned I like those two guys a lot
Sure.
for value. I often say that they would probably be back end of the first if this was 2022 class. So you're
Sure.
going to
Yeah.
see so much value in the second round.
Yep.
Can't stress enough if you can pluck seconds from your league mates and really get those as throw-ins for people that might not be viewing them as the value that they are. Go out and do it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep. Definitely agree. We just did a 2-round mock for an actual league that I'm in or we're in. So, we drafted for our league mates and everything, and we were just going through the second round. I'm like, man, this it's just so deep. It's crazy this year. And those second round picks are just so much more valuable than normal for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Even the third round is crazy, because like I said,
Right.
all those running backs that we just mentioned can not go in the second because of the wide receiver talent and tight ends. So you're gonna look at some of them, maybe Izzy and uh, Hank and those guys might slide into the early third, depending on how your league values those guys, because there's such a variance as far as who people have as their wide receiver 3 to 10 at this
Right.
point in time.
Right.
So
Yep.
it's league dependent. You gotta learn your league mates and kind of figure out who they value because you can get a lot of steals that way too.
Agreed. All right, so that is the recap of the running back. So, is there anything else you guys want to plug? I'd love to get you back on for the wide receivers when we do go through those
Mhm.
guys. Looks like you're pretty well versed on them already as well. So, that'll be a fun one. We're going to be recording that here in the next couple of days. So, we'll see if we can get Mike on for that one as well. But anything else on these running backs before we get out of here?
I think that was pretty informative for the
Hmm.
short period of time we were on, man. And I appreciate you
Absolutely.
guys having me on.
Yeah,
Love to come back and talk wide receivers or whatever you guys have plans. Sure.
perfect. Yeah. No, thank you for coming on, and everybody go check out Mike and the Smash Accept podcast. Like I said, very good for trade values and everything like that. If you guys are looking for advice, these guys do give good advice. I tend to have my own opinions on trades, so maybe I'm a little more bullish on some players than these guys, but I can't deny that they do provide pretty good value and insight into those draft picks and the player valuation. So go check those guys out. Follow him on Twitter at NerdBoyTakes, boy with an I, not a Y. You can find me on Twitter at TDC_Calvin. You can find Dale on Twitter at Dynasty_Dale. Until next time, if there's anything you guys need, hit us up. We'll answer any trade questions. One last plug, if you're looking for any, roster advice going into this offseason, if you're asking for any rookie pick advice or any trade advice, anything like that, if you're wondering what you should do, blow it up, go into a contendership or anything like that, hit me up on Twitter and I'd be happy to walk you through. We can do it on the pod. We can do it in DMs, whatever it is. So hit me up over there if you're interested. I'd be doing it completely for free, no charging of anything for that. So just trying to help you guys out there. So hit me up if you're interested. And that said, thank you guys for joining us. Have a good night.